So what's negated now is as follows. Let's get the flow here. The question he's dealing with is the mitzvah component of Tkiyah Shofar. The mitzvah component means that Hashem is addressing an entity that is mamish separate from him and do the mitzvah and connect to me. But the whole point of Tkiyah Shofar is that it expresses the etzem and neshama as it's rooted in atzmos, machshava atzmi, which is connected, related to Azulas, as explained yesterday in the previous Shurim. At any rate, that is deeper than the whole template of a mitzvah, which implies three things: the commander, the commandment, and one to whom the commandment is given, whereby that entity becomes connected. We're talking at a level it's connected to begin with. That's the whole point. The whole beer, why the dafka neshama itself can carry out the kavanah. So what's the mitzvah component? That's the shaila he's asking now on Oisches. Began to explain that in Ona Emlich there are three madregas. Very important to get this clear because we analyze further. The three madregas in Hashem's rotzen, I want to be king. And the three madregas fall into two categories: within self, conscious within self, and not conscious within self. It's the rotzen hagoli and rotzen hanelam, which is conscious in self. The rotzen hagoli is an articulated will that then leads to its realization. Rotzen hanela means that the will is expressed as in a heskem, that this is a desirable thing, that the person one day might or might not achieve it, even if he does, but not presently. It's just the skoma.
If he achieves it, it becomes good.
If he achieves it, then it'll go through the next stage, and then the next stage. We're talking only rotzen, and then it'll happen. But the rotzen hanela means just that it is, what is it? Nela means hidden from what? Not from the person. The person's thinking about this consciously. This is a desirable objective, but he hasn't gone the stage of the implementation of, I'm going to do it. It's simply, I want it is one stage, I'm going to do it. I want to do it is the next stage. I'm going to realize it is the second thing. Before there's a rotzen agoni, there's a rotzen hanela, which means that there's the pure desire for the object or the thing or the experience in one's head. When am I going to do it? Well, that's to be seen. That's not even addressed right now. First is the pure desirability of the objective. That's rotzen hanela. It's the heskem that it should be, that it's a desirable thing. And that will lead to, possibly, usually, not necessarily though, to rotzen hagoli. How many things do we have in our lives that it's a good thing, I desired, and we never act upon it? Never goes to the rotzen hagoli where we start to actually plan it. And it can even go there and you stop. You got the whole plan rotzen hagoli.
No one doesn't mean that it's hidden, the desire is hidden from himself. No one just means that it's just not brought down to any action.
Just saying that. It's completely conscious in self. It's nelam from realization, from action, exactly. Then there's rotzen hamuchlet, which is the second category within these three levels of rotzen. And what's rotzen hamuchlet? It's not conscious even within himself. He's not even aware that he has this desire. And the illustration for that, the deepest and truest illustration for that is the desire for a dira, for a dwelling place, for a home. That is an essential desire to our essential human state. So much so that he who doesn't have a home, Eino Adam, is not a person.
Is that desire because Hashem has a desire for a home? Is it connected? Does he have an essential desire to have a home?
Yeah. Who's speaking? Yossi.
Yeah.
We said yesterday, but why is it that we're made this way? Because we're made in the image of Hashem. And indeed, since Hashem's His deepest desire is a home, and all that entails a relationship, therefore, we have the same thing, precisely. Yeah. So this is something that's not conscious. And yes, we spoke about, I'll repeat again the things you pointed out. In the whole mitzvah that each house should be a Beis Chabad, and even a child should have their own home of Beis Chabad. This is all the realization of Dida B'Tachtonim, Mamish, B'Protius, and every neshama, and revealing that essential desire, which is a reflection of Hashem's essential desire, even in children in these last moments before Golus. We spoke about that yesterday. So now, summarize what we just said. 3 dargis in Rotzen, first 2 conscious in self, the third not. Rotzen Agoloi, a manifested desire to achieve the objective. Rotzen Anelam, an expressed desire that the objective is desirable. And Rotzen Amuchlet, not even aware of the desire, the will, the need in the first place. Now, likewise, the Mila. We went on to say, we looked yesterday, was the difference between now in the first 2. The difference between the first 2 is not only, again, Rotzen Agoloi means a manifested will which sets in motion the process of realizing the objective. Rotzen Anelam is, the objective is desirable, I want this. But it hasn't gone beyond that. The difference is not only in stages, in levels within self, but also in as follows. And he said that the Rotzen Hagoloi, let's pick this up now. How many lines at the beginning of this? I have a different layout here. Let's find a number which is close to it. It's a few lines above number 54, footnote 54. 5 lines above. It's after the square brackets.
The last word on page 10.
Oh, last word on page 10. Good. Now, what I just want to say, Yivchar, we're going to learn further answers. We'll answer further your question of yesterday, the end of this year. We'll get deeper insight, and we'll really answer the question. So, another difference between the first 2 levels, the manifested rotzen, which means manifested in terms of leading to realization, and rotzen anelam, where it's conscious within the self, but it is not yet. The person isn't about to carry, hasn't decided he's going to actually achieve it. He's decided it's desirable. So, difference between the 2 is. What is going to summon forth? Do it. That happens from an arousal and an inspiration that comes from outside of self. So through applying this to Hashem directly now. So that Hashem should manifest his desire to be king actually requires our request for it. That through Yidden accept upon themselves his blessed yoke of heaven. And they ask, as we say in Darash-השנה, rule over the world, all of it. Govern the world with your glory. So this request summons and elicits the Rotzen Hagoloi, manipulated, as it were. The Rotzen Hagoloi is affected and summoned forth by the request. Now, when Hashem created the world at the outset, there was no one to ask this. And there's a world, and he was Melech then. So he goes on to say, and this fact that the arousal of the I want to do it now is through the outside, the others, the recipient, this wasn't the outset of creation. Ella, then the arousal from below was It's the language of Kabbalah. Allah Osman was explained yesterday means the elevation of Mayin Lukvin, feminine waters. Feminine waters means Malchus Neshamas Yisrael As. So there was the arousal, rather the ascent of the feminine waters, Minei from within him. In other words, Hashem entertains the Nachas Ruach is going to have from our Avodah, even before we've done it. But as the Medrash says, with whom Hashem consult with the Neshamas of Tzadikim. What does that mean? End of quote from the Medrash. So the fact that they're Hashem entertained, the delight that He will delight in the Avodah of Tzadikim, which is every year. So this aroused, therefore, the manifested and the final decision, the will that comes with the decision and realization of being a manifested king, in other words, to create and be its melech. The dugmas melech basav adam, just like a basav adam where it actually happens. What is going to make him desire to be king? In a revealed way, he has it in the latent way. Every person, we spoke about the sister, it's the whole hakel. Everybody's latently a melech. On some level, everybody is a melech and a malch. But what's going to be ma'idit lepoyel is like the achtaras ha'am when there's a need. Yeah.
So does it need to exist?
Let me just finish the translation of the words that people. So like a king of flesh and blood, the rotzen golil limlucha, that the revealed desire to be king, misoyre, becomes aroused like the achtaras ha'am. That's what summons it forth in actuality, even the potential. It's there in a very latent and the very essential way, the levels we just described before. First essential, then on a latent potential level, and then an actual level. That happens when the people call it and desire it. Ask.
So does the Ratzin need to exist in Ratzin and Elam before it's drawn? Seems almost like the Melech doesn't know he has a Ratzin, perhaps, to be a Melech. And then through Sursa de Lasata, it becomes he gets this Ratzin.
Kind of Yankee's question yesterday, and your question yesterday is going to be answered in the end of the Easter.
Choya on the Rishon was long shape and second of Shana.
Uh-huh.
Adam Rishon was long shape for second of Shana.
Right, the second Rosh Hashanah was the first Rosh Hashanah. The first Rosh Hashanah, he called upon all of creation to bow. We're talking Chafayel at the very beginning.
Right.
First Rosh Hashanah was Friday of history, and he said, what he said is what David HaMelech brings in Tehillim. That's the words of Admo. The Medrash goes into detail that creation, all the creatures start to worship him. Yeah. He said, no. So he began the whole Avodah then. Every Friday night is a mini Rosh Hashanah. Every Friday afternoon is a mini Erev Rosh Hashanah. Tzadikim would doze, then to meet the Zohar, the slumber of Zohar. Many stories of Baal Shem Tov and other tzaddikim. Now to answer your question, so how does it apply? Certainly for the Eibishter. So the Eibishter is dependent on our Yisraelis, and if we didn't, there's no Ratzon Lemlucha. But hey, we're created by you. Explain now. By Yisraelis, the Ratzon and the Elam. And moreover, I think the simple question is that the Ratzon HaMuchlet, this essential desire for Dirib Tachtonim. So we're hardwired as human beings to have that. Maybe it's a decision. It's Bechiras Ha'atzmos. It's Bechiras Ha'atzmos, so there's no room for Sursa de Latata, which is the basic question of the Maamar. So I'm going to answer it now in the next few lines. And we make clear over the next few OECs, which I glanced at. So let's very important words coming now. Important be is the Ratzon and Elam. No, okay. So just to conclude the point, so this Eretz, the Rotzen HaGoloi, that is through what? The Am. This Eretz, the Rotzen HaNe'elam, U'lo yidei Susa L'tata. This within self, entertaining the notion of being a king within self, that doesn't require Susa L'tata. That's something that's the origin is the self. Actually do it. There's a need on the ground and they want me, then he does it. It has to be that way. He can't force his kingship. Earthly king. This Eredus Begoloi needs to have this Erusa de Latata. He comes along and says, I'm your king, and they don't want him to be king. There's no relationship. It's a very simple level. For kingship, for monarchy to actualize, it must have the desire and the coronation and the will of the people, as opposed to a despot or a ruler in Hebrew, Moishe, who enforces rule. A melech is dafke, malchus berotzen kibaleh, as we say every Friday, every night in Ma'ariv. It's the whole definition of malchus. But rotzen hane'elam, a latent desire that he might have to be king, doesn't need anybody else. That's all within himself. Now, so far, now comes the part that will answer all of the tensions that we all have here, because by this, fine, by human king, all this makes sense. But Lamaila, there is no other. He created the other, so the other is summoning it forth, but he created the other. So it's all also the Leila. Where's the source of the Tata? It's an existential question. What does the source of the Tata mean? An arousal from below we're affecting. He created us. Still all him. Like a king and a people, they're two separate entities, and the people come along and say, we want you to be king. Okay, you want. So that summons forth all the latent desires of kingship that every person has, to one degree or another, to be a leader, to make a difference. But the Eibishter all starts from him. So what's the source of the Tata? It's a very existential question.
Can the question be? Can the question be phrased as follows? How is it possible to be a king over a child, to a certain extent?
That's another question, completely. That's another question.
Well, we are part of Hashem to a certain. I mean, okay.
It's another question. That's another question. The answer to that is that's where the neshama has to leave the mat and go into a good. That's where the king relationship happens. Not the Maila. But here the question is something else. Here we're asking, he says, Rusa de Latata, we're awakening, we're arousing from Hashem a desire. But he created us to begin with. So it's all his doing. He creates us to have this will. So who are we fooling here? Whose will is it? Us? It's not us. We only have it because we created this way. Let's talk to the answer. Let's see inside. You understand the question? Huh?
You understand it? That is create the will.
Yeah. Inside. Let's see inside the mind. Let's see inside.
Rabbi, where does Breira come in, and where does choice come in with regard to? Is it an inclination that comes from God because He gave it to us, or because of the fact that we have the Breira, the desire from choice?
The fundamental question is, I don't want to go into this now. I'm just going to say to you, because it's very important. It always comes back to this. I gave a lecture on free choice a number of years ago. It's on our YouTube channel. It's on Chabad.org. And it just has to be listened to at least 3 times. I'm just telling you, because the ideas are so subtle and profound that the first listening just won't do it. So there'll be the answer to your question.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, and it's also going to be addressed here somewhat. But to understand it, which means to understand what we cannot understand. The point of the lecture is to lay clear the limits of understanding and where it stops, why it stops, and the conclusion of what free choice is and isn't at the same time. And those words were chosen carefully because there is and there isn't at the same time. That's the end of the lecture. There is no free choice and there is free choice. What does this mean? So obviously that's incomprehensible. The point of the lecture is to explore the limits of seichel understand what seichel is and why seichel is and what we are, and then confront the unknown, but appreciate the unknown, the unknownness of the unknown in seichel. So that's why you got to hear it a few times, because it's not the way we usually think.
Thank you, Rabbi. So it's something that's
question and answer that's resolved neatly. Commandment. It's not. But we have to understand why in seichel it cannot be resolved. That's what seichel needs to understand. Or gufa to understand in seichel. Right? So if you can't find it, we'll send it to you. It was the lecture was in response to this very popular guy. What's his name? Wrote a book on free choice. People read him. He's very popular.
My God.
No. A contemporary psychologist. Everybody uses a very brilliant man, an academic, and a string of academic achievements. Harrison, not Harrison. What's his name? No, Peterson. Huh?
Jordan Peterson.
No, Jordan Peterson. He's a fundamentalist. No, this guy denies free choice outright. He's purely rational, or claims to be. Thinks he is. The famous author wrote many books about free choice.
Jordan Harrison.
Who?
Jordan Harrison.
I think so. Yeah, it's only let's get distracted. If you're extremely podcasts and books.
I like the distractions. Gives the shit a little bit of juice.
A little bit of spice. He'll come to me. I was in my advertisement. I quoted him in the advertisement. 300 people showed up.
Posted your lecture on the chat. So.
So there you go. Thank you, Adam. The lecture's on the chat, and I quoted in the beginning of the lecture.
There you go.
I apologize to him. He deserves I should remember his name. I'm losing the name.
Where did you get your sources from?
Yeah. The Emir says you should really study every other discipline, and then there'll be a truly fair lecture. But I relied on him, his conclusions. I just relied on him. But his conclusions are logical. I understand them. You don't need to be a component. He says a very simple thing. It is eminently logical. You're going to behave the way you're going to behave. And that's the end of the story. So what makes up you? There's myriads of things. Your history, your DNA, your parents, all the experiences, they will determine your behavior. You can't behave other than the way you behave. Now, part of who you have is also intelligence that can consider other options. It's also part of your hardwiring. And if you fully understand and take apart the way you are wired fully, and if I had access to every detail of your life, and I knew your DNA inside out, and everything you experienced,
access to the ''N'',
then I would know, but if I knew all of the workings, I would know exactly how you're going to behave in every situation. And you can't behave otherwise. The free choice is a total nonsense.
So
and Al Piseichel is 100% right. Al Piseichel is 100% right.
That's why we have avoida.
But even avoida, it's also part of this. In human condition, there's this desire for meaning and avoida. It's all part of the hard wiring of who you are.
Mesiras nefesh?
Mesiras nefesh makes you feel good. Everything. It's a deep, good feeling and justifies. And you have an example of a father and a mother. It's all explained. It's a pasha tezach. You cannot behave other than who you are.
You're a victim of your circumstances.
You're calling yourself a victim. Whatever. Yeah, some people it's a victim of circumstances, which are myriads of things. It's everything you saw and heard and all your upbringing and your DNA and experiences and things. And that's going to determine anybody, the master computer, put all of this into a computer will say exactly how you are going to behave in every situation. And that's 100% true. It's true. So what's Bechira? So listen to the lecture.
No, you force
And
it.
even if you bring in the 'tchk, the never shall kiss, it's also hard way. Never shall kiss, if he feels guilty, he wants to do right and good. There's going to be a struggle, and based on that, the outcome will be based on all of the factors. It's not rocket science. It's not deep psychology. It's bullshit. So we don't know, often. So we can't predict people's behavior because we don't have access to. The most part we can, mind you. We don't know every single part.
So we can judge it. It's not their choice.
Yeah, and in halacha there's a lot of that. We don't judge a person not guilty because of circumstances. Halacha acknowledges that. Free choices are often removed. If you don't know about something, you have free choice to do it. And this whole idea is to want to do with the right thing. It's all part of the human condition. It seeks fulfillment. And fulfillment is natural. A mother feels more fulfilled seeing a child eat than eating herself. And this is nefesh. You give someone else, it's fulfilling. It's part of the human condition. It's part of life. Life needs to sacrifice in order for other life to grow. Look at the salmon, etc. It's all part of the condition of life. So where's free will? So listen to the lecture. I make his question much stronger. I say that that's not the question. Much stronger. I'll be told the question is even deeper, which I won't tell you now. So that's going to be the cliffhanger, the giveaway. Al Pitoida is a much bigger question on free choice than what he's posited. Much stronger. Infinitely strong. The emphasis is what he's addressing it here, these few lines here.
He created.
Huh?
He created the Bechira itself.
Who's the chooser? Everything is Yeshma in B'chol Rega. Nothing is any independent. So the question is not you have free choice, it's who you. There's not even a chooser to begin with. Einad Mulvad. That's the fundamental question. Whole thing is an illusion. Not just free choice is an illusion. You are an illusion in the sense of your independence. Al pi Torah. And yet the same Torah says, B'charta b'chaim, this week's parsha. So how do you reconcile this? In other words, it's how do you reconcile? The same pasuk says, Einad Mulvadoi and Breishis Borolikim. You have the problem right there. Or in the Alter Rebbe's words, in the pasuk, then the pasuk says, in the middle of the pasuk said, there's a Shemaim, there's a Oretz. You said there's a Shemaim and the Oretz. Then you're saying it's Einoi.
Take a choice.
Count at both. That's the real question. The answer to that takes the impossible yes and no free choice at the end of the.
The answer to that is hidden softness. Make space.
It's also not. It's also now. It's like it's only in our perception. It's only in the Gillian. Engine Valley doesn't change. Even with it's all our perception. That's it. That's das Tachten. It's das Elyon. Is there's no mitzias. It's all bottle. It's great Hashemesh b'Shemesh. Okay, we'll stop here. Today's story because I wanted to talk about it a few minutes.